always trying to stay in your own power. Like I would tell like anybody listening, it's like so easy to make somebody else wrong. It's so easy to focus on them and be like, they did this, that, and the other. But like, where does that leave you? That leaves you in victim, and you don't get to like learn, grow, or evolve from any of your experiences. So you do have to like maintain the ownership of you chose to be in this relationship. You chose to be in it for the length of time, you know, whatever all the scenarios are.
Welcome back to Quiet the Clock. We are joined again by Jackie. And on this episode, her and I are going to dive into dating, which it's layered. So I don't know where we want to start. I guess.
I think what ended up like opening this this topic for us was when we were talking about the egg freezing journey. And I'm so adamant about women being younger and opting in and all that. And I think I told you it's not a end all be all cure. Like It's not the thing, right? Like if you feel like you're having issues in your dating life, if you are having trouble building relationships, connecting, intimacy, and your dream is to be a mom and not do it by yourself, but to have a partner, there might be bigger fish to fry in the room.
Right. This is like the whole other angle look at. Well, so I guess where we'll start is your journey, and what you share with me. I would love for you to share here is your recovery from love addiction.
Yeah. So right around the time that the thing ended with, it's like embarrassing to talk about now because it was basically like this guy was so unavailable, and I created this like massive fantasy and positioned myself as like this important special person to him. And then the shoe dropped where he was like, yeah, it was never going to be you. Because we met while he was going through separation. So he was like, it's never going to be you. The kids can't know that I was like on a dating app when that was happening. And like, I met somebody else, and it was like, whoosh, my whole like world blew up. And before I got into, or right around when I was getting into like a relationship with him, I work with these two amazing coaches. And the one pointed out to me, she's like, it sounds like your dating life is like unmanageable. And like, I don't really know what the heck that meant, right? I was just like,
I'm curious what she meant by that. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, okay. I'm just going to jump into this thing, right? So like case in point, example number one, unmanageable, right? Here's somebody who cannot give me the things that I say that I want in my life. And yet I'm pursuing them in a way that like I can't manage myself.
But that I think that I want to normalize that idealization. I had this similar pattern, and I dated emotionally unavailable people, and I idealized like they were that was gonna work out. And I think that was my own protective mechanism that I didn't recognize at the time, but it perpetuated this narrative of like, why can't I meet anybody? Why can't I? So I didn't turn the lens on myself to say like, what is my pattern? Who am I choosing? But I think that's a normal sort of thought pattern for women that haven't done the work to think like, totally, this is something, it's something more than it actually is, and not really seeing what's happening in front of you.
When you haven't done the work, you're like unconscious to your own pattern. So even the example that you just shared, there is something in there that's a gain to you, or that is helping you feel like, okay, I'm safer in this situation. Like if I pick somebody that's emotionally unavailable and then they need me to whatever, fix them, rescue them, mother them, therapize them, then I have more value in this relationship and like they're more hooked into me and it's more likely to work out. As opposed to being like two interdependent beings coming together. But yeah. So I jumped into this thing instead.
Not going to listen to this.
That was fun. And then it ended. And then, and really like when you create a fantasy, like your body and your brain know no different. Like
exactly.
They think you were like head over heels in love. You fed yourself all the drugs, all the like dopamine, the oxytocin, all that stuff. And it shatters and it feels extremely painful. And I'm so proud of myself that I actually like let myself sit in most of the pain. I let myself cry. I didn't numb. I didn't go like, friends were like, let's go to the movies. I'm like, I don't want to see that movie. I'll stay home.
You can go a completely different way. You could jump into something else. You can numb yourself with
a million ways to like check out and self-abandon. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And same coaches, that month we were playing around and doing brags. So, you know, kind of exercising our muscles of like women really declaring like, hey, I did this and I'm proud of this. And
I love that.
Inside of our Facebook group, a woman said, I went to 30 meetings in 30 days and I feel amazing for sex and love addiction. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's that thing they told me I should do. And instead, I went this whole route. All right. So it was kind of like my rock bottom, and people have rock bottoms in recovery, and that pushes them into program. So I went to a meeting. I was like, I don't know, this feels really weird. It was a co-ed meeting. I was like, wasn't really relating to a lot of like the way that sex addiction shows up for people. I didn't have a problem with that. In fact, I was probably more on the celibate side of things. And so I reached out to that woman, and she's like, oh, come to my home meeting. And, you know, you log on to the Zoom, and I don't know what I was expecting, but every woman on there is around the same age, gorgeous, head on her shoulders. And then they start sharing about their dating life, their relationships, the things that they're challenged by. And I'm like, I belong in this room.
Wow,
I'm like, I have just hit home. Like, this is definitely my people. This is where I'm meant to be. I get it. And yeah, so that's how I ended up finding myself like in program. And I was, again, guided and got an amazing sponsor right off the bat. The first thing she asked me to do was to not talk to any men for 30 days. And I was like, oh, you know, like what? Again, clock's ticking, right?
That was my immediate thought. I have so many clients that like that, where it's they can't take that break, where they acknowledge, and we talk through that and how beneficial that break might be, but they're still pulled to the apps where they can't close down. So yeah, that 30 days.
And that's where like some of like addiction behaviors come in, because it's like, no, I gotta be in I gotta get this fix. And so the whole point of taking the break for me was just to be able to observe how much validation I was seeking from men and what that did for me. And so kind of what it does is it like really gives you your own power back. You end up getting a lot more clarity if you're not always like looking out there and like scanning for like what's available and all that. You can come back to home and be like, all right, what do I actually want? Like, how do I become the person who then lines up with the person I'm looking for?
I love that. I think that's so much of what we've been talking about today, just this pause and this patience and needing that pause to get that clarity, because otherwise we just steamroll through life and we don't stop to think about like what's driving this behavior.
Yeah. So yeah, then I started working through the steps. Step one is like kind of admitting that you have a problem. And I knew I had a problem, but I was definitely not up for like being like, oh, I'm an addict. Like I didn't really like love that word. And to be honest, I'm like struggling with that a little bit again. And it's been like a year and a half since I've started. But I went to my friend's wedding. And so when I did the 30 days of no contact. And then after that, you don't date until you finish step 5. And so now I'm in this period of I'm not actively dating. I'm not on any apps, all that stuff. Go to my friend's wedding, reconnect with one of her friends who was actually in her wedding party. And I'd known him like through the years of going to visit her and things like that. And we happened to both be single. And we had the greatest weekend. We shared a room. We shared a bed. We laughed till 2 a.m. Nothing physical happened. Came home, told my sponsor. And my sponsor's like, well, you're lucky I'm not like the person who's like, follow the program to a T. She's like, yeah, let's see what happens. Go ahead, go date him. And so we don't live by each other. So he came up the next weekend and my nervous system was shot. It was like in pure like validation. What does he want? Is he into me?
You're right back.
Yeah. And he left, or I left, actually dropped me off at the airport. I was flying east, but I was like, yeah, okay. I was like telling my sponsor, I'm like, yeah, step 1's done. Like, clearly I've got a problem. Like,
wow.
Here's this person that when, you know, the weekend before, when there was nothing, like no potential or whatever, I just like enjoyed myself, could be present, had a great time. And then the second that like he comes into my world and there's the possibility of more or whatever, I am going sideways.
It's like your relapse moment. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, definitely not ready to date. And so basically what happens for me, like through this 12-step model, and I can talk about it through attachment too, but is that I make these people my higher power. So I make the person that I'm dating be the person who's going to validate me, tell me I'm important, tell me I'm worthy of something, you know, whatever, all the things, instead of understanding that I get that from my creator, like who made me.
And how do you stay, I'm just thinking about how you stay grounded in yourself when you're looking to someone else for all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. You lose yourself. Yeah. You're just like, and you're in like constant vigilance, picking up like all of their cues. You abandon yourself. Yeah.
We were talking off camera about attachment style, and you had just shared you just read Attached.
Yeah, it took me a minute to finally get here. I was like so resistant to that book. I don't know why, but it's definitely a great read. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I think with that understanding, things start to click and make sense. And sometimes maybe you don't want to face what your exact attachment style is, but learning it is so powerful because then you can start to recognize the patterns and the maladaptive patterns or the harmful patterns and start to shift and move away from them.
What I think was really powerful about that book is that you can also see other people's attachment.
Oh my God, you start, yes, 100%.
So I think you can keep yourself from getting into situations that are not going to be helpful for you. So like this guy, to me, I don't really know honestly what his attachment style was, but he definitely wasn't looking for something, and I found him to be just not the type of person that I want to end up with. Like somebody who it felt like a lot of energy to like do a little thing for somebody else. And I was like, that's not like, I'm like the therapist I was seeing at the time was just like, you give so much, you're so open-hearted. Like you need a partner that's going to be giving at that level too, because
and in those moments you were like giving all of yourself over to somebody. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what his attachment thing was, but I will say that like when somebody's unavailable or avoidant, because in the book it's avoidant, you're going to always be like chasing. And if you're anxious, then usually like you will make it about you when it's really just how this person's built.
Well, it activates your attachments. If they're avoidant, it's activating your anxious attachment. So it works completely against each other because they're pulling away, but you need to get closer. And the closer you get, the further they pull away. So
it's like chasing.
Yes. It's horrible.
Yeah. So that, I mean, knowing that and then being able to look for the actual behavioral things in somebody else. And I actually thought like the last guy that I dated, I thought he was pretty like healthy, probably like even secure attached. And once I read Attached, I was like, oh, wow, he was actually avoidant. Because at the end, they say like at the end of the day, like, is this person naturally moving towards intimacy or away? And like, so all the behaviors, the bottom line is that. Yeah.
So how has your journey been going through the program, reading Attached? Can you share where you are in your dating life, dating status, and how having this information and these insights and understandings, how's that informing how you date or connect?
Yeah. So right around the time when I was kind of getting ready to be like cleared for dating, I met this guy. I'll just use his name because he won't care. So I met Brian, and we met out. I wasn't on any apps or anything like that. And there was an attraction. I felt like his energy felt like really awesome. And I just wanted to like get to know him more. And we kept it like casual. Like he came to a brunch that I hosted, a onesie brunch before the holidays. And he came with like a gingerbread onesie, and I don't really drink. And he brought me like Pellegrino and glass, which was my favorite.
Aww.
And was kind of, working the party as was I, because I was hosting. So we didn't get to spend too much time together, but he talked about, he raises money for the university scientists, and this one woman is studying the link between Alzheimer's and birth control. And he started talking about birth control, and I was like, oh, I'm on birth control because I was doing the retrieval. And I was like, I hate being on birth control. I don't want to be on it. And I really want to watch this documentary about it. And he was like, oh, I'd be down to watch that. And like, that was our first date. We like watched a birth control documentary.
Interesting first date.
I will tell you that is definitely a change. I don't think I've ever watched a documentary with somebody for the first time, or like like the old version of me was like, would go out and be like, okay, I like have to get his number and I have to. And I was like, when I met him at the gala, I was like, hey, I'm hosting a brunch in a few weeks. Like one of the girls will get you
I think from that space, you take so much pressure off and you can just be yourself. I know for me, when I met Rob, the pressure was off because I've got to this place of like gratitude and acceptance for where I was. And then I dated in such a different way. And prior to that, I was like, should I text? Should I not text? What should I say? Be the cool girl. Don't put too much pressure. Don't say what you want. And I met Rob and I was like, all right, whatever. And I was just totally myself. It sounds like that's an experience for you that you can just.
I think it's important that you want to prioritize this. I'm not saying like don't put energy and effort into your dating life, but it can't be like the center of your universe, because then you're going to be like a yo-yo on a string, being like every little, did they call, did they text, this, that, and the other. And every person is going to be like this pressure on you and on them. And it just doesn't, like, relationships can't be born out of that type of pressure, or at least a healthy one can't be born out of that.
They often are not born out of that. Yeah.
So we, like, that was date one, and date two was the next night, which I typically like with a dating plan inside of program, you create a dating plan that keeps you do a lot of like looking at your history of dating and seeing where the pitfalls are, where are you settling, you know, where did you rush in or did you go too slow, whatever it is, like for each individual person, you create that dating plan with your sponsor. So probably I should not have been going on 2 dates 2 nights in a row.
Gotcha.
So kind of like spacing it out, dating multiple people at the same time so that you're not zoning in on one person.
Do you remember that in Attached? They talk about that in Attached,
Yeah.
especially for someone that's anxiously
Yeah.
attached. It's helpful to date multiple
And I
people.
also think like now when I look back at Brian and like thinking that he leans more towards avoidant, it's like I would have actually, if I had dated him even like slower, I would have seen some of this stuff emerge. And then if I was dating more than one person, I would have still been like kind of on the field, if you will. But I don't regret anything in the way it happened because it taught me a lot about intimacy and like adult relationships. And it had been 10 years since I had like a committed relationship. So yeah, lots of learning, lots of gifts. So like absolutely like no regrets.
I love that mindset though. I do. I really love that because
Yeah.
what is the meaning behind it? What are the takeaways? Again, you can choose to look at it a very different way.
And like very much like always trying to stay in your own power. Like I would tell like anybody listening, it's like so easy to make somebody else wrong. It's so easy to focus on them and be like, they did this, that, and the other. But like, where does that leave you? That leaves you in victim and you don't get to like learn, grow, or evolve from any of your experiences. So you do have to like maintain the ownership of you chose to be in this relationship. You chose to be in it for the length of time, you know, whatever all the scenarios are. Yeah.
I think, yeah. And I think sometimes that's avoidance, you know, we're talking about avoidant attachment, but the avoidance to self-reflect, and there's no growth in self-reflection. And I know for me, I don't think I would have met Rob if I didn't have this moment where I stopped and be like, okay, hold up. Like what's my role in all of this? And that's when I was able to identify my pattern and then change that pattern. So I think it can be easier to blame somebody else and to look at ourselves.
So much easier.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm so grateful for like the friendships and the sisterhoods that I have that like really hold me to a higher standard. And
they can be the mirror when you don't want to be the mirror.
They're like, okay, whatever. We don't care about him. He's gone. Like, what about you? Yeah. Like you opted into this. So yeah. So, our relationship, I guess it did start like somewhat slowly because then I went home for Christmas break, came back, and he picked me up from the airport. I remember freaking out and being like, it's too much too soon. And my sponsor's like, it's just a nice gesture. Yeah, it's just a ride. Like, chill out. And then we did have like, I guess our first like official date and had like a first kiss. So like, again, super different from anything. I feel like, especially when I was living in New York, dating was so formulaic.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, okay, you go to drinks, maybe you make out, you go to dinner, he pays, then you have to do something back. So you invite him over for dinner and then you have sex and you don't know each other. And now you have like all this expectations, but they're dating 7 other people, you know, all of this type of stuff. So never in my wildest dreams was I like, oh my God, we're going to hang out 4 times for hours on end each time and never kiss. Right. So yeah. So then we started hanging out a little bit more, and he was very clear from the get, like he's not dating anybody else. So we weren't like in a committed, like we want to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but we weren't committed. We weren't dating anybody else. So it was just, which was so refreshing for me to just in New York again, like it was like such a competition. You feel like you're vying against other people. And for this, I felt like we had this like bubble of safety that we were committed to. Which is so
huge. Safety's been a word we've used a lot today, and that's so important. Yeah.
So yeah, then things just like progressed and I learned a lot, and then ultimately like I just saw that it wasn't going to be my person, and I ended it. I ended it with my coaches. We had a whole session around whether you can give up good for great. And
ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it was like I had been praying on it for so long, and I was like, something's missing here. Something is not like, I did feel his like resistance to like intimacy or his resistance to like moving forward. We started having we had like 1 or 2 arguments, and like we couldn't navigate those arguments well. Like we didn't have the tools to know how to disagree. And for me, that was like something that was super important, because I feel like relationships are not like you see everything the same way, but you have to like learn how to disagree.
Well, conflict can be so amazing in a relationship if it's done well and done respectfully, and you can really grow from those moments, again, if you do it well, or you can break in those moments. So I think that's so incredible and such a testament to your work to have that moment, to recognize those things and to make that choice to leave a relationship.
Yeah. The last like disagreement, argument, like what happens to me is I just like shut down because I feel like I have a lot of tools, but my nervous system gets activated. So then I don't know how to access the tools, and I'm afraid to like express myself because I'm like, well, I know I could say this better if I like visited the tools and the frameworks and stuff like that, and the nonviolent communication and all that. And he definitely picked up a few stones. And so it wasn't a good look. And so like a couple weeks later, I still had never voiced how much like some of the things he said hurt me, and stood up for myself and what my experience was. And so I wanted, when we had that coaching around like good to great, I was like, okay, at the very least, I need to like advocate for myself, and I need to like say these truths that I've been holding on to. And that conversation went from that to broken up like in 10 minutes. So
wow.
I was just like, okay, like that's fine. Like this is how it's meant to be. I was in Hawaii. So I was like, oh, this is great, you know? But I did get back to Santa Barbara, and I went through the grief. I definitely went through the grief.
Yeah. And you have to sit in that, like you said earlier, like sit in the pain of it. And I think there's grief too, and say if this was yours, like just the loss of not just the person, but like what you thought it could be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like what was great is having program during that point in time, because we have literature. And so I remember like opening the book and going to the withdrawal chapter and then reading about withdrawal and being like, oh, I'm going through all this right now. This is normal. You liked somebody, your nervous system was attached to them, your attachment system was like integrated with theirs, and now it's not. And so you're going to go through.
That's such a breakup. I mean, I've never heard it framed that way, but it makes so much sense, this withdrawal period, because it's a person that you've shared with, you've talked to every day, that's part of your routines, and whether it's good or bad, it's that drug.
Yeah, it's for me, the withdrawal is like you're in this physical pain, and your brain is like trying to solve for how it can get you out of pain. So it's like, maybe you can just settle for this. Maybe you could just be okay with this. Maybe you didn't see it that way. Let's go back to him.
Exactly.
All of those types of things. But then if you, similar to the first breakup that I was discussing earlier in the show, if you really let yourself just sit with the pain and go through the pain, it goes away. It does. It doesn't take that long. It's like a few weeks. And so anyone who's like still thinking about their ex, like months and months later or years later, or still harping on stuff, like maybe you should go to a meeting. Because
maybe you didn't sit with
you've created your own addiction inside your head, like that you're like beating this drum, like put it down, let your body process it, meet someone else, like get on with your life.
Yeah, maybe that's just a segue to one of the last things I want to talk about in this episode, which we had talked about on our initial call, was this idea of why is it so hard for women to meet somebody, or women making it harder for themselves, or both?
I'm like, I can't remember what our initial I loved our initial conversation. I was like
you were on a beach in Spain. I was like, I think what we were saying.
My thoughts on this.
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, so a good example is like, since we had that conversation, which was like shortly after I moved out of Santa Barbara, so ended the relationship a couple weeks later, left Santa Barbara, and to Brian's credit, I want to say he helped me a ton with the move. We are still friendly. I will see him this weekend. That works for some people, not for everybody. I have to have boundaries around things, but I do appreciate him, and we're just not the right fit for each other. And so there's a lot of like admiration there. And so this is such a good example, right? So the whole summer, me traveling around, I did not date because I'm moving around other countries. This isn't where I want to meet somebody. And I also wanted to like process letting Brian go and not bring like that energy into another relationship. I mean, it was a month later, I remember in Prague in the bathroom hearing like a song from our first date and still crying. It's like, okay, I needed to like process it out a bit. And now like, I feel like I'm getting ready to date again. And so I'm ready. So like, then it's fair for me to go out there. I'm clear on what I want, but I'm also, there's such a difference between standards and expectations. Like expectations will take you further from what you want. It will put so much pressure on the other person. They're like ego derived. Standards are like, okay, I hold these standards for myself, for me personally, and I trust God to know the standards I'm holding. And so just like you were saying with your husband, it's like, when somebody is brought to me, I can trust that this person's supposed to be there, and I don't have to analyze them and interview them and look for their faults and whatever, all the other stuff. Yeah. Or try to change them or anything else. It's like, I can just enjoy them. So I think women do make it harder in some sense because they hold expectations. They don't hold standards.
That's such an amazing distinction between the two. And I agree with that. I think expectations lead us to that idealization. It can be very disappointing, but getting clarity on what you want. And maybe that's the best way women can help themselves is that clarity and the pause. And the thing, all the things that you have done is like self-reflect, do the work, have the support.
Figure out your dating patterns. Figure out what kind of plan you need to be dating so that it's like healthy and works for you. Have something that's central to your life that you believe in, whether God, universe, whatever, and not that person, because the healthiest relationships are two independent people coming together with interdependence. And then my last piece, because I've done so much work in this area over the last few years, is the feminine. Like, I truly believe like all these women want this super masculine man. You can't end up in a relationship with a masculine man if you're the masculine. Like, oh my God, relationships need polarity for attraction.
I know you have to come on back. You have to come back because that in itself can be an entire episode.
So let them lead, ladies. Let them lead. You do not have to like, if they're not making the next date with you, they're not that interested. Let them go. Goodbye. Like, go make yourself available for someone who is.
Okay, so I usually wrap up the episodes with like what parting advice, but I think you just nailed it. I think that's amazing, incredible parting advice. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you being here. I'm so incredibly grateful that we connected. I do want to share our first call. You were on a beach in Spain, and we're like, let's hang out. We should be friends. And I'm so glad to have you here. And
of course, we're on our way to friendship.
We totally, absolutely. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Quiet the Clock with Jackie, who has shared some incredible insights on dating and self-reflection and understanding our attachment styles. If you're enjoying these episodes, please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more incredible episodes. If you're ready to take charge of your relationship journey, visit quiettheclock.com today to download your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner. This is a guide I created for those navigating the complex terrain of differing timelines with your partner. It will provide you with exclusive insights on understanding your relationship by sparking meaningful conversations and encouraging you to take unconventional action in the face of life's most important decisions. Again, head over to quiettheclock.com now and claim your free copy of Balancing the Biological Clock, Expert Advice on Handling an Unready Partner.